everyone wanted to do something about ocean plastic. We found a collection of 11.4 kilos of plastic for every product, equivalent to 1,000 plastic bottles in weight. Thinking was, we really need to kind of dial up the level of ambition because the stakes are super high. Ocean plastic's expected to quadruple in the next 2 decades. So despite, everything that we probably think that we're kind of heading in the right direction, we're still not. So we've still got a long way to go.
Hey guys, and welcome back to another exciting episode of Catch-Ups in My Kitchen, the podcast about all things food, health and wellness with me, Georgia Simmons, host of the podcast. This podcast aims to give you healthy habits to use in your everyday in order for you to look and feel the best version of yourself. In my kitchen today, I am joined by Will Pearson, the co-founder of Ocean Bottle, a company on a mission to make an impact on the large global plastic pollution issue that we are facing. The plastic pollution currently in the world is bigger than we can ever imagine. Soon there's going to be more plastic in the ocean than fish, and that is something that is just not okay. I think we all slightly turn a blind eye to the greater issue of plastic and recycling and the damage that it is causing. When we put our rubbish in one of those big black bin bags, tie the knot and pop it into the bin, I don't think we actually think twice about what then happens to that rubbish. I know for one, I don't. I think we are all trying to do our best with using reusable bottles and using metal straws, but there's also other things that we can do and we need to be aware of the bigger picture. Will shared with me that in the UK, there are shiploads of rubbish that we ship over to third world countries in order for them to deal with. That is just not okay. Ocean Bottle uses their reusable bottles as an object for change. By purchasing a bottle, you are then funding these huge plastic collection programs, which is absolutely incredible. I sat down with Will today and asked him so many questions about what goes on behind closed doors, what we don't get to see, and how each of us can make a huge difference if we all do our bit for the environment. I needed this conversation personally because there's a lot more that I can personally be doing, but I was always a bit skeptical on what does go on and how does it really make a difference. So this conversation has really motivated me to now do better when it comes to recycling. I think you're going to love this conversation because personally I really did. But if I can ask you to share this with someone else who also needs to hear this, that would not only make a big difference to the podcast and the growth of Catch-Ups in My Kitchen, but it also make a difference on Ocean Bottle and the ocean plastic pollution problem. So do your bit by just sharing this episode. Honestly, guys, thank you for your support. It means the world. I really hope you enjoyed the episode. Now let's get stuck in. Will, welcome to my kitchen. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you. Amazing to be here.
Yeah, great to have you. So
Great kitchen.
Thank you so much. It is a nice little kitchen. Do you mind giving a quick elevator pitch, who you are and what you do?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Will. I'm one of the co-founders of Ocean Bottle. We basically exist to enable individuals to make a global impact on the ocean plastic crisis. I think we found that it was really hard for people in general, like you, me, to really make a difference. So we wanted to make a simple way for people to make that impact. So for every Ocean Bottle we sell, we fund a collection of 1,000 plastic bottles in weight. And in December, we hit a really big milestone, which was that we've now collected 1 billion plastic bottles.
That is huge. 1 billion plastic bottles is huge. And this whole issue is actually massive. And we'll touch on it in more detail. Like, I'm slightly more pessimistic about how I can make a difference or how I can actually help. So I'm really interested to go in this in more detail. But before we do, we have a quick fire round about all things food. So cook in or eat out?
I'm a cook in, eat out type of person, sort of bit of both. If I'm allowed to pick that, I know that's a cop out.
You can do both.
Yeah, no, we love cooking in. My go-to dish is sort of like a courgette linguine.
Oh,
so sounds healthy, but it's actually not that healthy.
There's loads of cream and some cheese.
Yeah, well, yeah, there's a lot of parmesan involved.
Yeah,
so yeah,
fine,
it's really good.
Okay. Nice.
But yeah, we love to eat out as well when we can.
So what's your favourite restaurant in London?
That is a good question. I mean, London's a big place. I think it's like a city of almost 10 cities almost. So I'd have to pick one of them. If I was going to choose, I'd probably actually go for anywhere that's currently listed on Yonder. I don't know if you've heard of Yonder.
I have, and I can't remember why I've heard of it. What is Yonder?
So basically every pound you spend, you actually earn up points, and you can spend that on different places to eat. It's actually like, it sounds like I'm like a paid ambassador. I'm actually not, but it's an amazing kind of setup. And it means you get to try out new places, which I think is the cool thing actually about it.
That is cool. And what is your go-to Deliveroo?
My go-to Deliveroo, that's a good question. It would probably be like a Thai, maybe a Rose's Thai.
Yeah, Rose's is good.
Is quite good. But actually I like kind of finding the small artisan places now as well and seeing what's out there.
Yeah, I'm with
you. But packaging is a problem.
Packaging is a problem. We'll touch on that. That is very true. Go-to cuisine.
Go-to cuisine, probably an Indian actually, probably a curry. Love a curry, or Italian. Can't go wrong with Italian.
Can't go wrong. And your go-to fridge or cupboard staple, which isn't like the basics.
Maybe the M&S piri piri mayo. Actually, quite rogue, but a pretty good condiment.
We haven't had that one here, so that's a good one. And my other question was your favourite dish to cook at home, but I think you've answered that with a courgette.
I've already beaten you to it. If I was going to add one, it'd be Ottolenghi's vegetarian like tray bake ragu, which is really good. Kind of like
recipes.
Lentils, pearl barley. Almost tastes like a proper ragu bolognese, but it's got a few fun twists.
I actually think I've tried that. Is it like harissa? Has got harissa in it?
Yeah, it's got harissa in it. It's really good.
Yeah, I tried that. That is very good. Okay, so I would like to start with the overall mission and concept of Ocean Bottle. Big question to start.
It's a big question to kick off with. So we really started out, it would have been about 5 years ago, maybe a little bit longer. It was around the time that Blue Planet 2 launched. And I think actually there's a lot of companies that come out the back of it and almost call like Blue Planet 2 babies. I think we're definitely one of those. But what we found was all of a sudden, everyone wanted to do something about ocean plastic. They became acutely aware of the problem, the crisis kind of on a global scale. And I think what we found was that it was really hard for people to make a difference and actually contribute to solving this problem. So we thought about coming up with a simple solution. Everyone drinks water. A reusable bottle is often the first thing that people buy on their sustainability journey. So we thought, how could we actually 1000x that and, not do kind of a one-for-one product, but actually do a product that really makes a big difference. So we fund a collection of 11.4 kilos of plastic for every product, equivalent to 1,000 plastic bottles in weight. We fund projects all around the world in coastal communities. So in Indonesia, the Philippines, India, Ghana, Kenya. We're also launching in some small island developing states like the Andaman Islands. And the common theme is that there's very little waste management infrastructure. So basically by setting that up, enabling people to exchange their plastic waste for money, we can prevent plastic from entering the environment and the ocean, but also provide incomes and jobs at the same time.
I mean, that is incredible. So if I was to purchase an Ocean Bottle, that would then go towards funding all these different kind of projects that you have around the world.
Exactly. So we actually, at the very beginning, we set a commitment, which was that we were going to give 15% of our revenue to funding plastic collection projects, which is, to put that in context, it's about 15 times 1% for the planet, which is the initiative that was started quite some time ago, actually, by Patagonia. And the thinking was, we really need to kind of dial up the level of ambition because the stakes are super high. So we've now actually given almost £4 million to plastic collection projects, which would have been probably about 250,000 if we'd just done 1%. So we're trying to prove that this business model kind of works and inspire other organizations to join in. So please come join us.
I mean, it is incredible. But when you kind of had, okay, actually, before I ask that question, my first question is, what was the pivotal moment? Obviously you mentioned Blue Planet, but what was the pivotal moment that you were like, I've had enough, I need to do something about this? Because tackling an issue which is a global issue is quite a huge task. So can you kind of go back 5 years ago when you had the initial idea, and like where were you, and paint the picture?
Yeah, so there were probably a few pivotal moments. I think often inspiration, sometimes there's a light bulb moment, but sometimes actually there's like a few things that maybe happen in your life that kind of, almost transcend to one point. For me, it all actually started in high school. So it was geography class, learning about people and planet, all the challenges that we need to solve in our lifetime. I basically became completely obsessed. So I'd come home, talk at my parents for hours. And then I think that kind of stayed with me. After studying engineering, I actually went out to spend a year as a deckhand. So I worked out in the Indian Ocean. The owners of the boat that I worked on, they actually bought, I think it was close to sort of 1,000 Evian bottles for their family to drink over Christmas. And I remember kind of pouring out half-drunk bottles, crushing them, putting them in a black bin bag, and then they'd be sent off to an island in the distance in the Maldives where they would just burn all the plastic. And I remember it quite vividly, and I just kind of thought to myself, this isn't right. And then there was a few inflection moments after that. I found out that actually ocean plastics expected to quadruple in the next 2 decades. So despite everything that we probably think that we're kind of heading in the right direction, we're still not. So we've still got a long way to go.
This episode is sponsored by Access Biotics, a groundbreaking natural food supplement which uses 4 billion live bacteria, which specifically help support skin health through the gut microbiome. I have always had pretty good skin and take a lot of care in the products I use and my skincare routine. But I've always suffered from psoriasis, and recently I have had a rash on my chin which I can't seem to get rid of. I have therefore been taking Access Biotics in order to help with this, as the ingredients specifically help with psoriasis and other skin conditions, and I'm already noticing a difference. Since speaking to the Access Biotics team, I have heard that 2 in 100 people in the UK also suffer with psoriasis, which is a crazy statistic that I was not aware of. Therefore, if you are tired of trying different products and want something that actually works in order to support your gut microbiome and benefit your skin, give Access Biotics a go. You can buy their 28-day supply directly from their website at www.accessbiotics.com, and you can receive 10% off if you use the code CATCHUPS. Have it with some warm water on an empty stomach in the morning and you'll notice a world of difference. Now let's get back to the episode.
It was really that. It was kind of like, I want to have a crack at this. I've been passionate about the ocean for a really, really long time. So I think everything kind of almost came together to create this.
I mean, the fact that like you're burning plastic, that doesn't sound right to me.
It's not a great outcome. And unfortunately, a lot of plastic in the world is incinerated. Some of it's incinerated in like an industrial process, which is less bad. But when it's like incinerated as in a basically open fire, you end up with really bad levels of pollution, and it's basically just not good at all.
That is awful. Like I remember reading a statistic where it said there's going to be more plastic in the ocean than fish. I think when I read that, I was like, what?
Well, we actually, we kind of, we spoke about that as a team, and we basically just decided that's not a world that we want to live in.
Yeah.
And I can imagine that's probably the same for a lot of people. No one wants to live in a world like that. So it's kind of how do we actually then mobilize some action and prevent that from hopefully happening. Yeah. And it's going to take huge global collective effort. So I think collaboration is probably one of the most important parts of that.
100%. I think it is huge because you're changing habits that we've been building up throughout our lives, and you're changing convenience. And that often is like, I think the root cause of a lot of this plastic is probably convenience driven, whether it's quick meals, whether it's water on the go, whether it's takeaways, whether it's all these things. I think plastic is probably like the inconvenience kind of go hand in hand.
Well, I think fighting it is definitely a war on convenience for sure. And you look at a lot of the single-use plastic products that exist today, And I think the reality is, businesses created them because they saw economic opportunity to sell something that was packaged up, convenient, easy to consume. And it's hard to really place the blame on consumers because it's everywhere and it's actually hard to almost avoid it at this point. So I think business has got a huge responsibility to kind of clean up its act and actually enable people to be sustainable. But also, individuals, I think we need to just buy less junk.
Yeah, 100%. How big is this kind of global plastic pollution problem?
So we like to keep things quite positive over here at Ocean Bottle, and the reason for that is because there's some really big studies that have come out that basically show how optimism fuels action, and like there's a really direct correlation between believing that actually we can do something, we can create maybe this future that we want to live in, and then actually getting behind it and doing it. But I think it's still good to be aware of the scale of the challenge. It's a big problem, and as I mentioned, it's getting worse. So we still have a long way to go in terms of fixing it. To really kind of simplify the problem into the most basic sense, we basically have what we call a design gap, which is that we're using single-use plastic for completely the wrong applications. So like, let's say you buy a bag of lettuce at the shop or whatever, you're wrapping something that lasts for maybe a week in a material that lasts for 400 years. Like, I don't think that makes much sense. So there's a big kind of challenge there and opportunity to really design and use materials that are fit for application. And then on the other hand, we've got what we call the collection gap, which is basically the projects that we fund in coastal communities around the world to actually set up collection and prevent plastic from entering the environment in the first place. We're really lucky here in London that our bins and our recycling gets probably taken out on a weekly basis. That's not the case for a lot of people in the world. So actually helping kind of bridge that gap is a really impactful way in terms of solving the actual ocean plastic crisis. So basically, if we can do both of those things at scale, there is a real opportunity to actually reduce the amount of plastic going into the ocean, and it's actually been estimated that we could reduce it by 80% in 2 decades, which is pretty cool if we put our minds to it.
That is amazing. I think also a lot of the time plastic isn't the healthiest option for us as well. I think we're constantly hearing about how bad microplastics are, which helps in terms of reducing our use of it. So I think if there's more awareness on that, as well as the environmental part, like how plant-based kind of rose rapidly because everyone was like, meat's so bad, fish is so bad, like go plant-based. If we kind of have the same rise in terms of how bad plastic is, that would be really cool.
Yeah, I think there's almost like 2 angles coming at it now. So you've got the sustainability side of it and the fact that people are more environmentally conscious now than ever. And then the other flip side of it is, totally like human health. I mean, some of the stuff that's come out recently around plastics in the bloodstream, a lot of the additives that are used in plastic are extremely toxic, carcinogenic. You've got, PFAS, which is basically an additive that's now being banned, luckily, but it basically doesn't ever go away, and it's super toxic. So I think all of these things can add up. Humans, on average, I think there was a study that came out that we about a credit card's worth of plastic a week, which is insane. I'd like it to be properly fact checked, but it basically, whether it's a credit card or a quarter of a credit card, it's still a lot.
Well, even with coffee lids, like I'm sat here with a lovely coffee, but when it heats up, when you're sipping out of this and it gets hot, like I always think about the plastic kind of going into your body and all of that. It's like, oh, but then some people don't like drinking out of the cardboard ones. It's tough to kind of, find the perfect solution, but I think there is definitely so much more we can do.
But it comes back to your convenience point again, right? It's, how do you create something that's equally convenient, ideally, because people are reluctant to take a step backwards. In some cases they will, which is great, but I think we need to have that in mind when we're designing things. And yeah, totally, it's been very highly unregulated, so the additives that are in plastics are pretty unchecked. So luckily things are kind of starting to move now, particularly in the EU is actually really leading on this.
Amazing. I think also like having like the bottles that you sell, and you also do like the tumblers and stuff, that is the perfect solution, because that way you can have your coffee or your water or whatever in something that is convenient. But then my thing on that is that, let's say you're then going into the office and you need your water, your coffee and your lunch. Your bag, there's a lot of different things going in your bag. So I'm like, okay, then you're going to have to kind of compromise and maybe take one or two, or it is difficult. But I think having bottles and like tumblers that you can use for coffee and water is like a really, really good start. And I think, like you mentioned, that is the first step on people's sustainability journey, which I think is great. And like they look great, and like you can personalize it, and that's a good start.
Yeah, I think it's actually easier than you might think, and it almost becomes a bit addictive as like a personal challenge. Everyone drinks water all day, every day. We're made up of over 90% water, and yeah, I think actually once you kind of adopt that as a habit, it feels very weird to then almost step backwards again. But it's really difficult, to bring everything with you all the time. I'm not a saint. I'm not perfect. I try and do what I can. But I think, we need to kind of recognize that, it's really hard still to be completely sustainable in 2024. And business has got a long way to go to really enable us.
No, definitely. Like, I actually can't remember the last time I bought a bottle of water out, and I'm happy to say that. I think
that's cool.
Once you start with like your bottle and the fact that your water stays cold, that's amazing. And you buy like a plastic bottle of water, and then in a minute it's like lukewarm, and you're like, oh, that's not as nice.
Well, exactly. It's even better function as well. So,
yeah, exactly. So I want to touch on plastic as currency, because I think in these kind of less fortunate countries, it is currency for them, and that's really interesting. So how does that work?
So we've now got a global network of plastic collection projects with different partner organizations that we work with. And how it fundamentally works is we'll set up collection points, we'll set up a material recovery facility, for example. And then what we do is we enable people to actually bring their plastic and exchange that for an income. So we actually attach a value to the plastic. We pay, above market rates for that plastic. One of our collection partners has received fair trade certification, and we've got loads of different kind of certifications around the different projects. But then we also have social additionality elements as well. So people can get access to healthcare, they can get access to education and financial literacy programs. We also help people get identity cards. So, for example, in order to set up a bank account, you need to have an identity card, and a lot of people don't have that where we're operating and working. So, it's really about both the environmental and the social impact, and a lot of our projects are in regions where there's really high levels of plastic pollution, and no one wants to live in that. It's not only it's horrible, but it's also a huge spread of disease, and it affects the local environment, their fish stocks, so many things. So driving that is it can be really, really impactful. And just in terms of how people always wonder, how does it work with the plastic? So actually we collect loads of different types of plastic. So bottles kind of help visualize it for people, but we also collect bags, multi-layer sachets, all these horrible materials that basically need to be eradicated. And then we'll recycle what we can back into the global supply chain. But then what can't be recycled gets turned into either things like eco bricks for housing projects, or actually gets co-processed into cement. So it helps reduce the carbon impact of cement.
Wow, that's so interesting. So one of my questions was, different plastics get recycled in different ways. It's not just like plastic recycled, done. Like there is a bit of a sorting process, isn't there?
Yeah, so you've got to kind of simplify it, you've got high value plastics and low value plastics. High value plastics typically actually have a recycling value. So like there's basically some demand for them, which means that it's much easier to process them and ultimately get them, back in the loop. Low value plastics can often be the opposite equation. So you're actually having to pay to get that material processed and recycled because it has a negative recycling value. And a lot of those materials can't even be recycled in a traditional like mechanical sense. So
what example of plastics that can't really? Is it like film?
Yeah, a lot of films. So like, things like crisp packets, sachets, where you've got multi-layer materials. That's, really, really challenging. It's typically those materials that we struggle with. I mean, styrofoam, don't even get me started. It needs to go.
Remind me, what's that?
It's like the kind of porous thing that if you got like a big object, it'd like be packaged in that basically.
Yes.
To kind of protect it on its travel journey, but it basically pretty much cannot be recycled.
Oh my gosh. Okay, that is crazy. And like, what about toothpaste tubes? Because I've done a lot of work with Parlour, and they are like, toothpaste tubes just can't be recycled, and their whole thing is obviously like providing like oral care in glass, and like I love what they do. They've been amazing, and I'm like, that is crazy that like toothpaste tubes can't be recycled.
I mean, yeah, if you think about it, it's kind of like it's a niche product, but it's a niche product that's used by everyone. And I can only imagine how many billions of toothpaste tubes are consumed like annually. And that is really where, material innovation is so important and comes in, and that point around like designing fit for purpose is really key. What's exciting now is that there's a lot of material innovation happening. Someone called Sean, actually on our advisory board, has started something called plasticfree.com, which is a materials resource library of plastic-free materials that the 160 million product designers in the world can access and use to design with.
Wow, that's
so
amazing.
From banana leaf to potato starch based materials to seaweed materials that we're looking to incorporate. There's so many options. There's still a long way to go in terms of like commercially scaling them, but we really need like the big companies as well to kind of take it on board and get going.
I was going to say that because obviously with those things it's all about scale, isn't it? So at the moment obviously plastic is probably the cheaper option.
Totally.
But that doesn't make sense when that's not a natural material anyway, whereas like banana leaf is more of a natural material, so you'd think that would be a cheaper option. But I'm guessing it's a whole scale element.
Yeah, I think at the moment it's definitely not cheaper, and that's the big balance, right? But if you factor in basically like the negative externalities of the plastic that's produced, if you probably put that into the equation, it would probably start to look quite different. We need to like scale them up to kind of commercial scale, because then you've got something that can compete with plastic.
I guess it's like defining what cost actually is. Like, is cost initial cost, or is cost like greater environmental cost?
Yeah, exactly.
So what about the ocean bottle that you've got in front of you? That's also made up of different plastics, right?
Yeah, so we spent a long time designing and developing it. I often kind of gloss over actually, and I talk more about the impact. And I think that's because we've always seen it as like a vehicle for the impact, and we always talk about ourselves being an impact company first, reusable bottle brand second. We spent a hell of a lot of time designing it, and that was because we wanted it to have this kind of world-leading mission. But we also knew that if it wasn't a really good product that looked great, that was super functional and designed sustainably, no one would buy it in the first place, and certainly no one would use it. So we invested a lot of time in that. It's a basic design that doesn't use composite materials, so it means it can be both. We have kind of spare parts, so you get spare parts for life. So if you lose a cap or something breaks, you can get that exchanged for free. If at the end of its life, like hopefully in like 50 years, if you've really pummeled it into the ground. We actually had someone who they drove over it with their car, and it survived.
What?
So yeah, I
That's
think
crazy.
their kid chucked it out the window, and then they drove over.
That'd be
and
a great
it survived.
advert.
It would actually be a really good advert.
Yeah.
But yeah, all things kind of come to an end, and at that point you can actually take it apart and recycle it, which is also kind of key. We use about 70% recycled materials at the moment, there or thereabouts. It kind of varies across the different products. Getting food grade recycled plastic is really, really difficult. And actually, I don't want to bore you with like legislation and stuff, but the EU have just put in a law which means that it's now even harder to actually put in food grade recycled content. So it's like a step backwards, basically.
Food grade meaning?
It means you can because it's in contact with liquids and drinks and things, so you have to pass certain thresholds, which is a great thing.
Yeah.
But it can be really, really hard. And then the fact that it's dishwasher safe
I was about to say that
means,
as well.
There's also loads of different considerations. We want it to be a durable product. So it's really tricky. So yeah, we're still on our journey. We won't be happy till we get to 100%. But yeah, we're always keen for collaborators to help out, and yeah, I think we spent probably a couple of 100 hours just this year trying to push this forwards again.
Wow.
So we've spent thousands of hours on it.
I think it's amazing. I checked out your website, and I think it's really cool for like companies to personalize it and like add I think it's great to be able to kind of give to employees, and like again you're kind of working on a scale, which again with all of this, I think your whole mission is scale because it's such a global problem, right? So I guess trying to get the more people to use it, more people to do their bit, is really, really cool. So talking about doing our bit, I want to talk about something that I have a real issue with. And I know we touched on this before, but I have a real issue with recycling, which sounds like really, really silly as we're having this conversation about recycling. But my biggest thing is that if I go downstairs to the bins and put my bin in the bin, and look at the recycling, first things first, we only have one recycling bin. And I'm like, so like food and everything goes in one. And then we have like a recycling bin. And I'm like, surely that should be anyway, that's a whole different problem. But I'm like, I see all sorts in this recycling bin. So then I'm like, why am I going to spend my time going through my bins and putting plastics in one, like cardboard in another, blah, 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 for it all to then end up in one bin? So can we touch on like what happens behind the scenes? Because like you say, we put our bins out here in London or in the UK, and the bin man comes, collects the bins, and that's it. We don't see it. And if you're, I don't know, having a clear out or moving house maybe, everyone just like gets the big black bin bags, shoves in a load of stuff, ties it and puts it away. And we don't see what then happens. And I've got a real problem with it because I'm like, if I can't see the full process, I'm struggling to now work out what I can be doing.
So I think there's probably like two sides to the question. One is almost like on a personal level, and I think everyone plays their part and can really actually make a difference. And then the second part is almost like the global situation and actually kind of how this works behind the scenes. Mm-hmm. I think look, it's we were talking a bit earlier about actually kind of e-confessions on the personal level and the fact that no one is perfect. And I think actually opening up and talking about these topics more openly could only encourage us all to actually share and ultimately improve versus kind of, brushing it under the carpet and hiding that away. So I think, we all have a personal role to play. And I think one of the biggest things we can actually do is just buy less stuff. So that's actually one of the things I've kind of committed to is actually, don't really buy Christmas presents anymore, which my family hates.
Oh, wow.
I've managed to kind of get away with that. Because, often you buy stuff that, they'll use it for a bit and then it kind of is delayed landfill in a way.
I do agree. My biggest thing is when people do like Secret Santas or like work things and you've got a budget of like, I don't know, £10-15 and you're like, I'll just grab something and just, wrap it up. And I'm like, no, those are the presents that I think I know it's the act of giving and the process of receiving, but I agree with you to an extent on that. I think there is a lot of garbage out there that
can we give experiences? Are there other things that we can offer? Mm-hmm. And I think there definitely are. So I think that part of the of the waste problem often is kind of overlooked and actually needs to really be considered. And then on the single-use side, obviously it's a major challenge. We touched on material innovation, what's kind of happening there, and I think fundamentally it's a systems failure that we're in this situation that everything we buy, you bring your reusable bag to the supermarket, you still fill it to the brim with plastic wrap products, and it's a systems failure that everything is wrapped in plastic. Now, it doesn't mean that you shouldn't recycle it. You absolutely should. We try our absolute hardest, but even if you look at the back of a lot of the bags and sachets and things like that, it actually says do not recycle on the back because it's it can't be processed by your local council. So there's a big challenge there that needs to be cracked on multiple levels, both like personal commitments, business level, government, and then just a kind of peek behind the almost the sort of non-transparent window of recycling. What happens? So it's a pretty flawed system. So basically, if you go to what's called a material recovery facility in the UK, a lot of those you'll see the most valuable materials kind of being taken out. So the high value plastics I mentioned, the cardboard, the metals, and those will actually be recycled. So there is real value to doing it. Okay. But then any non-recyclable materials, they will actually often be sent abroad to be processed in places that don't have the setup, don't have the facilities to do it properly, which basically means we are literally shipping our problem overseas. And I honestly think it's probably one of the biggest scandals of our time that we're not taking responsibility for our own waste in this country, but also in the global north, generally speaking. So what can we do there? We can actually put some pressure on the government. We can continue to write to our MPs. There's been some petitions that have happened and gone out, but fundamentally, I think we need to take responsibility for our own mess, basically.
Yeah, that is awful. Yeah. That there's basically shipping containers of our own rubbish going to other countries for them to deal with.
It's pretty wild.
That's awful. It's
and
like
not
dropping
not
your bin
a lot
up
of
at
people,
your neighbour and being sort it out.
Not everyone knows about it, which I think is the crazy thing.
That is terrible. And again, we're putting everything in a black bag and dropping it off, and that's our end of our own recycling journey. And then the country's doing the same thing to another country. It's just we're just passing the buck consistently, which is really bad. So when they're going through and getting the high value plastic, this might be a silly question, but is there someone actually standing there going through the plastic with their hands, or is it machinely done? It's
a bit of both. Okay. So you have it varies a lot from facility to facility. A lot now quite robotic and kind of technology driven, which is great because you basically increase the accuracy of it. But the first stage is often actually manual on literally a conveyor belt, which is pretty crazy.
That is crazy.
What is promising though, so a bit of positive news.
Yeah, please.
Is so currently as we're speaking, the International Plastics Treaty negotiations are going on, and there's likely going to be legislation around plastic waste exports that basically means countries need to take responsibility for their own waste, which is fantastic. And that basically means that the recycling that you do will really count.
I also want to touch on something that you mentioned before we started recording about how in these countries you saw someone cooking with plastic. They were cooking tofu with plastic. And that's just crazy that we are shipping all our plastic to these countries and then they're using it to cook with. So can you touch on what you saw?
Yeah, so this was actually with one of the film crews that we worked with in Indonesia. Big shout out Juna Films and the local team they worked with there. They basically had drone footage of a tofu cooking factory where they're basically processing tofu and they're cooking and heating that tofu with plastic. So the smoke that was coming out was basically completely black. So I hate to think, what is that doing to the food that you're eating? But then also, what is it doing to the local environment and the air quality in the area? It was mental.
It's just awful. Now, I want to ask a personal question just for my own benefit. What does washing out plastic do? Because I keep mentioning my mum on this because she's a plastic fanatic, and a recycling fanatic, which is great. She's like washing everything out and it's like immaculate in the bins. And does that actually benefit the recycling process? Or if you've got, I don't know, a bit of milk in the bottom of the milk carton, is that going to be bad for the recycling process? Like what does that do?
I mean, she sounds like an absolute legend.
She loves
recycling
it.
hero, by the way. I'm loving it. Yeah, as long as you're not like using up all the water in the world to clean your plastics, yeah, definitely it helps and it increases recycling rates. We were just saying actually earlier, so my family live in Oslo in Norway, and they actually segregate all of their waste. So you've got plastic, cardboard, metal, glass, and then general, which actually becomes a really small pot, hopefully.
Yeah.
And that really helps as well because it almost becomes like a challenge. Like, how can I put my clean plastic in the plastic bin? And it then means you've actually got, material that's way easier to recycle and process and hopefully turn into new things.
I think that's so good. Like, again, that's what we do where like home is in Somerset, and when I go home we have so many different bins for different recycling and it's amazing, but I then come here and it all goes in one bin and I'm like, hold on a minute, we're in the same country, like what's going on? How come mum's got a million bins with different things going on and I've got one and a little bag on the side where I'm putting things in? Like, this doesn't make any sense.
Well, don't even get me started. Yeah, I mean, I think we've probably privatized a few things in this country that we maybe shouldn't have.
Yeah.
And that's definitely one of them, not to mention water.
Yeah, completely. And I also think that, how there's like these food sinks that you can put your food and then you press a button.
Like in America, yeah.
Yeah, I feel like we need that for plastic to kind of like shrink it down into a...
To kind of compress it into a super bin.
Yeah.
And almost recycle it at home.
Yes,
That'd be pretty cool.
Yes. Let's take these into our own homes. I think this is I think we're brainstorming for Ocean Bottle's new product development. So what else do you do personally? How has this whole Ocean Bottle journey affected your kind of purchasing decisions and how you live your life?
Wow, I mean, what a big question. How it's affected me personally is massively. I think on probably two sides. So one is, the founder journey is I honestly think it's probably one of the hardest things you can do as an individual.
Yeah.
And I commend anyone who has started anything in any shape or form because it's a nightmare.
It is.
And then, obviously on my own sustainability journey, I think for me, it's been a really educational process. I probably naively thought that I kind of knew everything when we started. And the reality is, and you've probably heard here throughout our conversation, it is a process of kind of peeling back the rug and actually taking a look at the dirty laundry that is, that's kind of going on and under there. For me personally, I try and, as I said, buy less stuff. So I think that's probably my biggest personal commitment. But there's a lot of things that are really hard to do. One of the things I'm probably most guilty of is traveling. I love to travel, see new places. And that's something that comes with an environmental footprint. Again, I go to my local supermarket and either I can unwrap everything in the shop and leave it on the counter, which was actually such a cool thing when that was going on.
Yeah.
And actually, there's a really cool thing that happens annually, by the way, which I'd recommend to check out, which is called the Big Plastic Count, which is a challenge that people can sign up to, where for a week you basically count every piece of plastic that you consume.
Wow.
And it's really useful because it provides a huge amount of data that they can then show to the government, to plastic producers to basically tackle this issue. But also it's really reflective personally because it's like, oh my God, I've consumed over 500 pieces of plastic this week. Do you know what I mean? It's pretty messed up. There's loads of things you can do personally. I'd say I'm still on the journey and I think trying to inspire and drive the change really so that we can all benefit hopefully a bit from it.
Yeah, definitely. I
What about you? Yeah.
Oddbox to help with the whole packaging thing. So I think that helps in terms of everything is kind of just in the box, which is cardboard, and some of it's in brown bags. So I use fruit and veg box really helps. always have a bottle on me. Like, don't really use. I work from home, which I think is a massive difference. I think if you're out the house all day, you're naturally going to be picking up a drink of water, maybe your lunch on the go, those sorts of things. So I think I never eat lunch out. I always eat at home. Coffee, make it at home, or if I do go down, like sometimes I have the lid, or sometimes I ask for no lid. What's my biggest thing is probably the way I recycle is probably the worst thing.
The worst deconversion.
Yeah. I do think also, like, I'm just thinking aloud, but like when you order clothes and you get like deliveries and it's all in, like everything's got like a film, and I think I'm always a bit like, there's so much plastic in this bag. Like that's probably not great. But that's not my doing, that's their doing. But in terms of me, I think I definitely need to get better at the way I recycle. But again, my biggest issue was that what's my impact here? How
is it making a difference?
Is it making a difference? That was the biggest thing.
It can.
Yeah, and now I know. Maybe I will be better.
Cool.
So, kind of, how did you partner with these countries that you partner with, and what's the kind of like next steps for you guys in terms of partnering with more countries? Like, why did you choose those select few that you partner with, and like what's kind of next for Ocean Bottle?
Yeah. So yeah, and firstly to mention, I probably like almost ignore it, but obviously I carry a reusable bottle every day.
Yeah.
And
that's
it would
on brand.
it'd be quite ironic if I didn't carry an Ocean bottle. And it is honestly one of the easiest first steps I think you can do. But yeah, how we partner with countries. So we've actually gone for a kind of almost circumventing government approach, because I think we've sort of lost faith in government's ability to deliver on stuff. And I think if we can prove that a small private startup scale up can actually make a difference, you then almost prove them, okay, well, this is what you could do if you really took it into your hands. But yeah, how we partner is we work with various partner organizations. We've now got a network of partner projects. So we work with, for example, Plastics for Change, who are an amazing organization, Repurpose Global, Plastic Bank, and they really have the expertise and the knowledge to set up the projects that we invest in and that we do. I think we found that actually partnerships are a really good way to achieve a lot when you probably don't have all the resources to do it yourself, and there's probably people out there who are doing a better job than you are doing, or probably even could do. So yeah, we really kind of we love partnerships, and it's we're big believers in that to kind of drive forward whatever goal and impact that you have.
Definitely, I think collaboration is so key for all of that. I think it's so good, because I guess it is a huge thing to tackle, and you can't just tackle it on your own, and I think everyone's got to do their bit. So I think collaboration is so key. So what is next? I mean, I know that one of your goals is to recycle 7 billion bottles by 2025. That's a huge amount. Are you guys on track for that? How's it looking? Yeah,
we've got quite a few bits ahead. To be honest, I don't think I've ever been like more excited about what's next, and I think we've just been so lucky to have an amazing community, like people who've believed in our mission, people crazy enough to believe in it, and a lot of like heroes at companies who have wanted to engage their audiences with this impact. So that's really gotten us to where we are today. I'd say on the 7 billion bottle goal, we're definitely behind on where we wanted to be. I think COVID was a huge factor in that. I think it basically almost wiped us out as a business. But then actually last year was quite tough, economically, not only for companies, but also for a lot of individuals. So I think that kind of slowed down the pace of progress. But I am still hopeful. I think whether or not we hit the golden time, we're definitely going to hit it. So that goal it's equivalent to the weight of the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, which is the largest accumulation of plastic in the ocean. So we thought, wouldn't it be cool as a London startup to actually prevent another one of those from happening? But the goal is to hopefully do that and do that many, many times over. because it's a growing challenge. Like, we've got a really long way to go. So I think, what will you see next from us? We are continuously innovating and developing products to enable people to join the mission. We have our Ocean app, which actually is a companion app that goes with the bottles that allows people to fund more plastic collection for free every day just by bringing it with them. We've actually had 250,000 refills on the app registered so far.
That's so cool.
But the app is, it's honestly not very good.
Okay, fine.
We're looking to kind of redo that a little bit. And then we have our traceability platform as well. So we've built this traceability platform, which allows people to see when their plastic was collected, where, who collected it, and kind of all the storytelling and content around that. Basically to further engage people, and then we're actually opening that up to other brands as well, so that they can add plastic collection and what we do to any product or service. So if you sell zero waste toothpaste, you could collect 10 or 100 plastic bottles in weight per toothpaste that you sell. Or if you're Black Sheep Coffee, you could collect 5 plastic bottles per refill. So, and then we can kind of use that as actually an incentive to drive further sustainable behavior, rather than just like discounting or monetary rewards. So
amazing.
So there's loads going on and lots
going
come,
on. It's a lot though, like all of this traceability and everything. Like, there's a lot of behind the scenes that goes with all of that.
I think if you went to our website, you probably wouldn't know about everything that's happening.
No.
There's a lot coming, and I think we're really excited about what's next.
And what's the hardest thing about what you do right now?
I think the hardest part of it is probably, like any founder journey, it evolves a lot over time. So the hardest challenge at the start was, you've got no resource whatsoever, right? You're doing marketing, operations, finance, customer service, basically everything yourself. So that was probably the challenge back then. Now we've actually scaled up to, we've got a team of almost 50 people, and making sure that actually people are thriving in their careers and roles, and that we're really functioning as a team and a unit to like deliver on what we want to do is probably now the challenge. But I think really we're in a place that we're kind of like ready to go, like we're ready to scale up, and actually the biggest challenge now is just we need just more people to join, so please spread the word.
Definitely will. I love it. Thank you so much. So we finish with a final question, back to food, which is, what would your last meal be? Starter, main course and dessert?
That is a great question. One that I haven't spent much time thinking about.
It's quite a big one when you're asked it just off the cuff. But
off the cuff.
Yeah.
Well, off the cuff, I think it would have to be... Sorry, can you just give me 1 second?
Yeah.
Have to cut it. I was thinking... okay, I think I've got it. I think off the cuff, it would have to be a... what the hell is the name of it? It's an Austrian dish. It's a... okay. I think off the cuff, it would have to be a Käsespätzle, which is like an Austrian mac and cheese.
Oh.
Yeah, which is like, I mean, if it's your last meal, you might as well go out with a bang.
Yeah.
It's basically like a block of cheese with kind of gnocchi-esque potato dumplings. And then for my dessert, I think I'd probably have a Velskringle, which is a Norwegian kind of... we always have it on our birthdays. So it's like a birthday cake with like rum icing, and it's really, really, really good. Choux pastry with rum icing.
Nice.
And then maybe I'd flip it back to the starter, because I actually skipped over that.
You did skip starter.
But I would probably have maybe like a little bit of every cuisine.
So we've got
just
a
like a
platter going on.
like a world circle of like every cuisine.
I
as
like
a starter.
that. On like one of those little turny tables.
Yeah.
So you can like,
lazy
move it around.
Susan.
That's it.
Yeah.
Amazing. I love that. Will, thank you so much for coming on. I personally needed this conversation because I was getting so frustrated, and often I have these arguments with my mum where I'm like, but I don't understand where it's all going, and she's like, you've got to do your bit, and I'm like, I'm trying, but like, so it's been this conflict. So now I feel a lot clearer on what is happening, how I can do my bit, the impact that I personally would have. But I do think we need to spread the word and get companies to help us do our bit. I think you're right. Like, it does like start from the businesses themselves. So hopefully we can, drive some awareness with this episode. But thank you for doing all you're doing, because it's amazing.
Thank you so much. No, it's honestly been amazing to come and join. I think, we need to believe that we can make a difference. We can make an impact, and I think having that optimistic mindset really helps with that. But we need to put the pressure on companies. So keep dialing up that consumer heat.
Definitely.
But I hope it's been insightful. I hope you've learned something new, and hopefully you feel committed to joining in.
Definitely. I've actually got product ideas that I'm going to talk to you about after this, because I've had ideas throughout this episode. So I will let you know those in a minute.
Amazing.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.